The exhibition center was alive with bursts of color as towering floral installations lined the entrance, vibrant banners in shades of turquoise. Coral and sunshine yellow fluttered gently from the high-ceiling vents, and the crisp smell of fresh flowers mixed with the faint tang of new fabric in the air, while contestants hurried across the wide, polished floor in a rush of silks, chiffons, and satins, their reflections dancing across the gleaming tiles beneath the natural sunlight that streamed through glass walls on either side of the hall. And the central runway gleamed in the open space like a ribbon of pearl stretching toward the judges' table, draped in white linen and dotted with small arrangements of orchids. And behind the scenes in the sprawling backstage area, there was a constant symphony of activity as makeup artists leaned over models, dusting cheeks with peach tones and sweeping colorful eyeshadow across lids. Hairstylists moved quickly with combs and sprays that smelled faintly of coconut and jasmine. Assistants wheeled racks of dresses in jewel tones and soft pastels, and camera crews darted in and out capturing the flurry of pre-show preparation. And in the middle of it all was 19-year-old Alina Kapoor, standing in front of her assigned dressing table with her garment bag clutched close to her chest, her pulse quick but steady, her dark hair pulled into a sleek low bun, and the simple white cotton shirt she wore above her slip dress already dotted with a few specks of makeup from the artist brushing past her. And although the hall buzzed with the hum of voices, the occasional squeal of a steamer, and the shuffle of shoes against tile, her mind kept replaying the moment she and her mother had hugged at the train station that morning. Her mother's words still echoing that this was not just about winning, but about showing the world what she could do. Because in the cramped one-room apartment above their tailor, she had spent the last 3 months working on this gown until her fingertips ached, sewing late into the afternoon light, ironing in the warmth of the day, adjusting each pleat with care, and now she was finally here at the International Youth Fashion Showcase where talent scouts, brand representatives, and media reporters would all be watching. And as she unzipped her bag, she imagined the look of surprise on the faces of those who underestimated a small-town girl with no big sponsors. But the pleasant hum of anticipation in her chest suddenly turned to a sharp gasp when she saw the state of the dress inside, her hands freezing mid-motion as her eyes took in the jagged slashes running diagonally across the bodice and skirt. The beadwork she had sewn one by one gone from whole sections, leaving messy threads hanging and faint streaks of dull brown staining the once luminous pastel silk. And the disbelief in her mind was like a wall she kept trying to push through, telling herself maybe it had been damaged in transit or maybe there had been some terrible mix-up. But her gut whispered a name before her head could stop it. And when she glanced across the room, she saw Sierra Kane, her longtime rival, leaning casually in her seat while a stylist curled the ends of her honey blonde hair, her silk robe tied loosely at the waist, and her phone angled just enough to hide her face, though the slight upward curl of her lips betrayed the satisfaction of someone who had orchestrated a downfall. And Sierra was the kind of competitor who never got her hands dirty but whose reach was long enough to make others do it for her. Her family's wealth and influence ensuring she had the best designers, the best makeup artists, and the most flattering press coverage. And though Sierra had always worn a mask of politeness around Alina, the competition between them had been a silent battlefield of smiles that didn't touch the eyes, compliments laced with subtle jabs, and moments where one could almost hear the tension snap between their gazes. And now, as Alina stared at the ruined dress, her stomach twisted with a heat that was part rage, part heartbreak, because this was more than an outfit. It was her voice, her proof that she belonged here. But the stage manager's clear and cheerful announcement that there were only 25 minutes to showtime jolted her back to the noise of the room, and she realized with a hollow thud that without a dress she would be eliminated before even stepping onto the runway, her name scratched off the list like she had never been there at all. And as she stood there gripping the shredded fabric, she felt tears pricking her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to give Sierra the satisfaction of seeing her break. And that was when her gaze drifted to a corner of the room, where a black plastic trash bag sat crumpled beside a cardboard box filled with empty hangers and fabric offcuts. And an unexpected thought sparked in her mind. So sudden and strange it almost made her laugh at the absurdity, but she remembered a rainy afternoon. Years ago, when their shop roof had leaked and her mother had taken an old plastic tarp, cut it into strips, and turned it into a makeshift cover for a customer's order to keep it dry. And she had said with a shrug that beauty wasn't about what you started with, but about what you could make of it. And in that moment, Alina, breathing steadied, her shoulders squared, and she crossed the room quickly. Ignoring the curious looks from other contestants as she picked up the bag and returned to her table, shaking it open and cutting it along the seams with the small scissors from her kit until it spread out into a wide sheet that gleamed strangely under the bright daylight streaming in from the high windows, and she began cutting shapes, folding edges, and layering panels over her plain black slip dress, pinning them into place with the few decorative beads that had survived from her ruined gown. And the plastic's smooth surface caught the light in unexpected ways, reflecting hints of silver and deep gray. And as she worked, she twisted some of the scraps into thin rosettes to attach along one shoulder, creating a dramatic sweep across. Her collarbone then shaped the skirt into an asymmetrical cascade that looked deliberate and bold. And the more she pinned, the more she realized this could actually work. And the chaos around her faded into a low hum as she moved faster, tucking, folding, and sculpting until she had something that was no longer just a desperate fix, but an entirely new creation. Something with edge and personality that didn't exist in any of the carefully pressed and flawless gowns on the racks. And as she stepped into her heels and adjusted the makeshift dress, she caught a glimpse of Sierra's reflection in the mirror, the smirk slipping slightly into something more uncertain as her eyes took in the transformation. And though Sierra quickly turned away, Alina saw the flicker of recognition that this plan to humiliate her had just backfired. And when the coordinator called the contestants to line up, she moved with steady steps to her place in the queue, the plastic of her dress whispering softly with each movement. Her chin lifted, her heartbeat no longer frantic with fear, but pulsing with an electric mix of defiance and pride, because she was about to step into the bright open runway and show everyone that she was not someone who could be quietly erased. The moment the stage assistant lifted the curtain for her turn, the light from the skylights above flooded the runway in a soft but vivid brightness that made every polished surface gleam and every color come alive. The long stretch of white flooring, a head reflecting like glass beneath the tall arrangements of fresh tulips and daisies that lined each side in bursts of orange, fuchsia, and lemon yellow, and beyond them, the audience formed a vibrant tapestry of style with women in flowing floral skirts, men in pastel blazers, and children perched on their parents' laps clutching miniature programs, while the judges sat at their table, draped in white linen, clipboards poised, faces neutral but alert. The air heavy with a silence that was more anticipation than quiet, and Alina inhaled deeply, her hands steady now as she felt the slick but surprisingly graceful texture of her makeshift gown against her skin, the cool folds of black plastic shaped and layered over her slip into curves and angles that caught the daylight in shifting silver-blue highlights, and as she stepped forward, her heels made a clear, sharp sound against the floor, an audible punctuation that turned a few heads even before the visual impact registered. And then she saw the change ripple through the front row, first one judge's eyebrows rising slightly, then a subtle lean forward from a fashion blogger in a pale green jacket, then a flurry of clicks from the photographer's position near the end of the runway, their camera flashes strobing softly in the daylight, and she kept her chin high, her shoulders back, her stride even and deliberate, letting the asymmetrical shoulder piece and the cascade of the skirt move in harmony with her steps so that every angle revealed a new facet of the design. And there was a strange kind of music in the moment. Not just the upbeat track playing through the overhead speakers, but the rhythm of her footfalls, the faint rustle of the plastic layers, the sharp double click of a camera, the collective intake of breath from somewhere to her left. And she realized that what she was wearing no longer felt like an emergency fix. It felt like a statement, an audacious proof that she could take the most unexpected thing and turn it into something worth looking at. And as she neared the halfway point, she turned slightly, allowing the rosettes on her shoulder to catch the sunlight, their spirals glistening like dark glass flowers. and a woman in the third row nudged her companion and whispered something that made them both smile. And then she resumed her walk to the end, pausing for the final pose where she let one hand rest lightly on her hip, her other arm extended just enough to frame the curve of the skirt, her gaze steady on the far wall as if she had all the time. In the world, and in that stillness, she felt utterly in control. The kind of control she had never associated with a competition this large. And when she pivoted gracefully to return, the audience's murmurs rose just slightly. A soft wave that chased her steps until she disappeared behind the curtain, where the stage assistant gave her a grin wide enough to show dimples and said in a voice full of disbelief that he had never seen anyone turn a trash bag into a showpiece. And she stepped aside to watch Sierra take her turn, the older girl's gown, gleaming in champagne tones, the fabric moving in perfect waves like it had been designed for a slow-motion film shot. And yet, despite its clear luxury, it carried the predictability of a catalog spread. The safe elegance that impressed, but didn't surprise, and as Sierra walked, there was applause, polite and controlled. But missing that edge of curiosity and excitement that had followed Alina, and though Sierra kept her smile fixed, her eyes darted once toward the judges as if searching for a spark that wasn't there. And when she returned backstage, her movements were just a little sharper. Her robe snatched from a chair with a tug that was almost imperceptible to anyone. Not watching closely, but Alina noticed, because she had learned to read Sierra's tells over years of subtle rivalry. And soon the other contestants followed, each bringing their own bursts of color and shape to the runway. Some dazzling in feathers and sequins, others understated in flowing silks or tailored suits. And as they all stood in a cluster backstage, waiting for the group lineup, Alina caught bits of conversation from the crew passing by. Snippets like that black dress was something else. I'd never seen anything like it here before. And though no one said her name, she knew they were talking about her. And when the call came for all contestants to return to the runway together, she stepped into the line without hesitation, the plastic skirt whispering softly with each step. And the sunlight pooled over the stage evenly, bringing out the bright blues, greens, and reds of the gowns around her, making her black and silver creation stand out even more in stark contrast, like an ink stroke across a canvas of color. And the judges began moving down the line, their pens ready, their eyes scanning every seam and hem, stopping occasionally to ask questions. And when they reached her, the woman in the sky blue pantsuit with the red glasses tilted her head, adjusted the frame slightly, and asked in a clear tone what material she had used. Without flinching, Alina told the truth, her voice steady and clear as she explained how her original dress had been ruined minutes before the show, and how she had used what was available to create something new. And instead of frowning or marking her down, the woman smiled faintly and made a note, murmuring something to the judge beside her, a man with a silver feather tie pin, who then looked up at Alina and said this was the kind of adaptability and resourcefulness the fashion world respected. And there was a small nod from the others at the table. It's an unspoken agreement passing between them, and as the judges moved on, Sierra stepped forward with her polished charm, answering questions smoothly, but Alina could sense the difference. In the energy, the interest in Sierra's gown was there, but it didn't carry that extra spark, that curiosity that could turn a competitor into a name people remembered. And once the lineup was dismissed back to the green room to await results, the room filled with a low rumble of whispered guesses, nervous pacing, and the occasional burst of laughter from someone trying to lighten the tension. But Alina sat quietly on the edge of a chair, sipping water slowly, her mind replaying every step of her walk, the expressions she had caught in the audience, the flicker of the judges' reactions. And in the background she could hear Sierra tapping rapidly on her phone, her jaw tight, her posture a little too rigid. And Alina knew that whatever came next this day had already rewritten something fundamental in her, because she had faced the kind of sabotage that could have erased her before she even began. And instead, she had walked out there and owned a moment that was hers alone. And as the loudspeaker announced that the awards ceremony would begin in the main hall, she rose smoothly, smoothed the skirt of her unconventional gown, and walked toward the stage entrance with the steady heartbeat of someone who had transformed panic into power.